Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at 100 million simulations of an Unholy Death Knight opener. As usual, we'll be taking all resources, passives, cast times, cooldowns, buffs, debuffs, and talents into account. The simulation will be attempting to generate the most optimal talents and ability sequence for us. There are no templates or suggestions supplied beforehand. The only abilities excluded are utilities. Ultimately, this video will be nothing more than a neat experiment. These openers may work in some scenarios, but the best way to get better at PvP is to get familiar with your class. We are very aware just how ridiculous it is to let a program tell us how to play. The Unholy Death Knight was a class we were looking forward to simulating due to its seemingly complex rotation and unique resource pools. Our first step was recreating the rune system before we could start plugging in the rest of the class features. We were eager as we had assumed this unique rune system, along with wound, bursting, and runic power, would generate a surprising rotation. The result was actually the exact opposite. With all these confounding factors, the simulator was quickly starved and was producing a rotation that was somewhat predictable. With previous classes, we've been surprised to some degree by the generated rotation. In this case, it was very similar to how we had already guessed the abilities may fall into place. Since we're after single target damage, this was only made worse by the blocking of AoE talents, which the spec was clearly focused around. To quickly explain, normally when we simulate a class, most talent rows have at least two abilities that apply to our goal of maximizing single target burst damage. Because of this, there are many combinations of talents that can be simulated. This is usually where the simulator discovers which talents synergize best with each other or abilities. In the case of the Unholy DK, most talent rows offer choices that were either AoE focused or didn't guarantee damage. This left the simulator with less options to try, giving us a pretty straightforward burst sequence. Still, the generated rotation proved to be fairly effective. What the Unholy DK lacked in explosive power was made up for by its consistent pressure and resilience compared to the other classes we've done so far. The class's ability to put direct and heavy pressure on healers while withstanding the damage from nearby DPS felt very powerful. Its mix of physical, pet, and curse damage made it difficult to stop. Distance was sometimes an issue, but it merely stopped us from bursting wounds. Meanwhile, the pets and curses continued to eat at the target. The simulator favored applying dots first, to buffing the pet, and then bursting wounds on the target. This trifecta of damage changed very little while leveling, but this is probably because it didn't really need to. If you're a bit lost in these clips, we are exclusively using the abilities and talents our simulator has picked in the order it was picked as well. The simulator is designed to find a burst rotation that won't leave us starved and is always dealing damage. It then competes with itself millions of times to try and find what it believes is the best sequence. Utilities such as Wraith Walk, Death Grip, and Asphyxiate are being used manually outside of the damage macro. Our damage was designated to one button. As we mentioned before, unfortunately, we cannot test the effectiveness of the rotations at endgame right now, as the item level difference is too high as a fresh level 50. Instead, most of our testing took place in the upper 40s. For level 50, the simulator had decided between Army of the Damned and Unholy Assault for its final talent. Because Unholy Assault has a cooldown of over 1 minute, it was pushing what was acceptable for casual battleground PvP. Because of this, we'll also show the generated rotation when forced to choose Army of the Damned. Here are the talents that were generated. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th rows can be what you like. For the PvP talents, the only one needed to use this burst often was Necromancer's Bargain, which turns Apocalypse into a dot and brings its cooldown down by half. Here is the final rotation, with the simulator favoring Unholy Assault for the final talent. Because Unholy Assault has a cooldown of about 1 minute and 20 seconds, We've also generated a version that uses Army of the Damned. With Shadowlands just around the corner, we will be revisiting the classes we've already done to simulate their abilities at level 60, as well as including the borrowed powered features from Shadowlands. Thanks for watching.